Coming up on Network Africa, the African Centers for Disease Control warns that the second wave of coronavirus hitting Africa is more aggressive than the first. Suspected militant attack in northern Burkina Faso leaves 6 people dead. Plus, Tanzania releases human rights lawyer Tito Magoti after a year in detention. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Adegoke. The head of the African Centers for Disease Control, Dr. John Nkagasong, says that the second wave of coronavirus that's hitting Africa is more aggressive than the first. While speaking to the media, he warns that the continent is now reporting about 30,000 new cases daily compared to 18,000 in mid-July 2020. The health agency's tally shows that Africa has so far confirmed nearly 3 million coronavirus cases, with 68,755 deaths. Countries like Rwanda, Namibia, Zimbabwe, and the Democratic Republic of Congo have imposed new restrictions to limit the virus spread. Dr. Nkegasong adds that face masks are the continent's best hope to prevent the spread of the virus, and he is urging governments to subsidize them. Meanwhile, scientists say a variant of the coronavirus first detected in South Africa is unlikely to completely negate the immunizing effects of vaccines. British scientists expressed concern on Monday that COVID-19 vaccines may not be able to protect against the variant identified by South African genomics scientists and which has spread internationally. But Richard Lesles, an infectious disease expert at the KwaZulu-Natal Research, Innovation and Sequencing Platform, he says his understanding is that the comments were not based on any new data, but on shared information.
That we articulated when we kind of first released this information, that the pattern of mutations did give us concern. Not just because of the 501, which is similar to the UK variant and we think may be responsible for the increased transmissibility, but we were also concerned about some of the other mutations in the spike protein that in other experimental work has been shown to be able to escape from the antibodies, the neutralizing antibodies. We've been a bit cautious about kind of flagging the concern about the vaccines, is that for many of the vaccines, they are thought to induce quite a broad immune response. So they produce antibodies that will target different parts of the spike protein, not just necessarily one part of the protein. And that's why we think that although these mutations may have some effect, they're very unlikely to completely negate the effect of the vaccine.
Well, joining us now is Professor Lekan Ayo Yusuf. He's a member of the COVID-19 Advisory Committee for Gauteng Government in Pretoria. He's also a public health expert. Thank you so much for speaking to us on Network Africa. Now, with this new variant being discovered, how can African countries brace up and equip themselves better for the second wave that we are told, that is here?
Thank you for having me. make sure that we get the basic preventive measures, ensuring that people wear their masks, stay social distance, not to go out if it's not.
All right, seems like we're having some audio issues. We'll try to reconnect with Professor. But in the meantime, the World Health Organization says that vaccinating health workers and those at high risk of the serious diseases is the fastest way to stabilize health systems in countries. Now, this comes as more than 30 countries have started vaccinating their high-risk populations with various COVID-19 vaccines.
We must identify and find those who are infected, provide the care they need, and help them truly isolate safely. We are in a race to prevent infections, bring cases down, protect health systems, and save lives, while rolling out highly effective and safe vaccines to high-risk populations. This is not easy. These are the hard miles we must tread together. But if we act together, we can win both races and get ahead of the virus, while also limiting the opportunity for the virus to mutate further and threaten the health tools we currently have. 1 year on from WHO issuing its first disease outbreak news report about this virus, more than 30 countries have started vaccinating their high-risk populations with various COVID-19 vaccines. The scientific community has set a new standard for vaccine development. Now, the international community must set a new standard for access.
All right, we have Professor Lekan Ayo Yusuf, a member of the COVID-19 Advisory Committee for Gauteng Government in Pretoria. He joins us now. I'm so glad we could have you back. You were talking about how African countries could, better equip themselves for the second wave. And I hear you, at least from the little I could hear, you were mentioning people wearing their face masks, social distancing. But some citizens are quite, concerned, and they're not as concerned, rather, about this pandemic like those in the Western world. How can government ensure the citizens, adhere to these protocols? Because we see so many people are actually not following the protocols.
Yeah, I think that's what we call the prevention fatigue. Coming from the first wave is the same pattern that happened in Africa. The second wave was much worse. During the flu pandemic a century ago. So I think one thing for sure is that government needs to communicate very clearly. There should be some transparency. We experiencing a lot of what we call infodemics along with the pandemic. A lot of information, often incorrect information, gets circulated in the population. More often than when government communicate. Again, it talks about the trust in government in Africa, and I think this is the time to actually speak with the population rather than speak to population and get the population along by being more transparent and owning up the responsibility to support the population on this. So that way, the population also begin to have trust and take it seriously. We do have a real epidemic or the pandemic on our hands.
Now, let's talk about this new variant discovered in South Africa. There are fears that, it could negate the vaccine. We've heard British health officials say that. How true is this? And most importantly, what does this mean for African countries, especially for many of them who are still trying to have access to these vaccines?
Well, again, this should not be used as any excuse by any government not to move very quickly to acquire vaccines. There's no scientific basis at this moment to suggest that the vaccines we currently have will be totally useless. At the very best, it may be weakened by the fact that you've got this two areas of the spike protein that has mutated, but it cannot be that it's going to be completely ineffective. So therefore, any vaccination that can come into the population as quickly as it can, the better for the population in Africa. So there's no scientific evidence currently that the vaccine that we have or the variant that we currently have, one, is going to be completely evade the current vaccine ability to stimulate antibodies. Secondly, that is going to cause more death. And thirdly, that the prevention measures that we have for the first or the predominant strain before now is going to be different for the new variant. So the same prevention measures will still apply. So one thing to be sure of is that the kind of virus that we have is not unusual for it to have mutation. It's just that we talk about a dominant strain. Even before the second wave, there were some small amount of strains, but they were not dominant until we got this new dominant variant. So it is not unusual to have some level of mutation.
All right. We'd like to thank you so much, Professor Lekan Ayo Yusuf, a member of the COVID-19 Advisory Committee in Pretoria. Thank you so much for your time on Network Africa.
Thank you very much.
Well, the COVID-19 lockdown prompted some Nigerians to turn to farming as an additional source of income. Local technology startup Beat Drone, which saw an increase in the number of farmers reaching out to use its drones to spray pesticides, and tapped into the needs of both experienced and novice farmers during the pandemic.
Bidemi Olaojo sells seedlings and sets up home gardens in Nigeria's commercial capital. She thought her business would shrivel up when the COVID-19 pandemic struck, but then the orders started pouring in. Customers, she said, were scared of taking regular trips to the market that will likely expose them to the virus. Some, with more time on their hands during lockdowns, wanted to start producing their own herbs and vegetables for the family dinner table. After more than 1 year of being in the business, she barely had over 3 orders in a week. But surprisingly for her, during the lockdown, her deliveries moved up to 20 orders a day.
Like, I remember when COVID-19 started, I was so depressed. I was like, nobody's going to order for my seedlings again. In fact, I can remember there was a day I was crying. I was so sad about it. And lo and behold, when the lockdown started, the request for my seedlings, it's multiplied to about 100%. It was like really more and overwhelming.
Some Nigerians have ventured into farming on bigger plots rather than working on their home gardens. Veronica Kibu, a civil servant, 5 years away from retirement, said she and her husband decided to spend more time and money on expanding their groundnut farm in Nigeria's capital, Abuja.
Because of the coronavirus that has happened, my eyes has opened widely. So this thing has made me now, I've decided that I will not leave farming. I said by the grace of God, I will continue to farm until even when I retire.
To help reduce its dependency on oil, Africa's most populous country is pushing for more people to take up agriculture, which currently contributes about 40% to its gross economic output. Some technology firms were seeking to offer farming solutions at a time when restrictions on the movement of workers and social distancing is working against any desire to increase output. Nigerian startup Beat Drone, founded by Confidence Odionye, was helping large-scale farmers spray pesticides on their farms using drones instead of backpacks.
The aim was simply to ensure that we increase efficiency in the agricultural sector and reduce the cost of operation and also improve harvest yield in the agricultural sector in Nigeria.
Be rest assured that here
a government report on the impact of the outbreak indicates that about 39.4 million people, about a third of Nigeria's workforce, may become unemployed by the end of this year.
Still ahead on the program. We take an amusing journey into Cairo's Museum of Illusions. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the program. Here in Nigeria, the deadline for the SIM and National Identity Number integration is drawing closer, but the surge of applicants at registration centers continues to assume worrying dimension. While a number of them have found it difficult to go through with the process successfully, others are concerned about the disregard for COVID-19 protocols. However, officials of the National Identity Management Commission in Lagos State are giving assurances that the process will become seamless in the coming days.
It's not a very pretty sight at the National Identification Management Center in Alausa, Ikeja. Applicants besiege the center to obtain their national identification number, without which they may be cut off from their mobile phone network. The people paint pathetic stories of what they have had to go through daily.
My medication, this one, I never take it. I'm too strong, but I'm here since 4:30. I'm here since 1:30 in the morning. And at 4:30 in the morning, I reach here. My number happened to be 66. I keep on wondering, I bet some people that sleep here.
It takes the intervention of personnel of the NSCDC who happen to share same premises with NIMSI to maintain law and order.
You can see our officers and men at the gate, the provost, the operation, the armsmen have been managing this crowd even before today when this exercise began. We have been doing that very, very assiduously.
This is the scene you meet after you're done from the gate. It seems better coordinated here. Applicants are asked to sit according to their numbers, and then they are called into the registration hall one after the other. The elderly are given preferential treatment and attended to in a special section allocated. In a separate room, others take turn to undergo the process.
Once you come in, they'll verify all your documents, if they're actually your documents and what you are correcting. And if, since it is DOB, there is a mandatory payment of 15,000 naira to the federal government account, which is remitter. So after making that payment, then I start the process formally.
The regional coordinator for Lagos acknowledges the unusual surge in the number of applicants and the challenges of managing the crowd. She gives assurances that more agents are being licensed to ease the pressure of NIMSI.
I know that in the next few days, the telcos, our service providers, will start enrolling too, because in Nigeria now, our Honorable Minister for Communications and Digital Economy has approved the licensing of certain agents. We have private agents and public institutions. Just like Lagos State is one of our LASRA is a licensed agent. I know that in the next few weeks, a lot of this burden will be off NIMSI.
The NIMSI office runs on alternative power source and appears to be in need of more hands, but it's still the preferred choice for these applicants who say local council use the urgency of the situation to exploit anyone seeking to obtain the national identification number. Chris Illems, Channels Television News.
6 people, including 2 fighters from a Burkina-based civilian volunteer force, have been killed in a suspected militant attack in the Nord region of northern Burkina Faso. Local officials say about 100 gunmen raided Lumbila village that is near the border with Mali, killing 6 and seriously wounding 3 others. Burkina Faso formed the Volunteer Force for the Defense of the Fatherland, VDP, a year ago to bolster efforts by vigilante groups operating in the volatile northern and eastern regions. Dozens of VDP fighters have been killed in counterinsurgency operations and attacks by Islamic State and Al-Qaeda Sahel militants from neighboring Mali. In Tanzania, jailed human rights lawyer Tito Magoti has been freed after a year of calls for his release. Mr. Magoti was fined 17.3 million Tanzanian shillings on Tuesday. He was arrested in December 2019 alongside an IT specialist, Theodori Giyani, and charged with economic crimes. They were both accused of creating a computer program with the intention of committing an offense. But Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International had called for Mr. Magoti's release, accusing the Tanzanian government of violating his rights. Well, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, is in Sudan for talks on the economy following last year's decision to remove Khartoum from a list of state sponsors of terrorism. The Sudanese government said Mr. Mnuchin would discuss debt relief and future U.S. aid to Sudan worth more than $1 billion. Sudan's economy is deteriorating with high inflation and shortages of currency. The U.S. removed the country from its terror list in December following Khartoum's normalization of relations with Israel. Well, on a lighter note, let's step into Cairo's Museum of Illusions. The museum offers an interactive experience for people of all ages through its spectacular installations that defy the physics of perception and illusion. Take a look.
Walk under a swimming pool, fully dressed without getting wet. Step into a tunnel where the ground sways under your feet. Or stand upside down in a rotating room. But this is all just pure illusion. It's an experience offered in Cairo's Museum of Illusions, where visitors enjoy nearly 70 installations that test their senses.
Honestly, this is a new experience. This is the first time to have something like this in Egypt. This is suitable for all ages. The young and old will have fun. Illusions are all things that I see for the first time.
Illusions are designed to trick one's senses, but everything has its own scientific, mathematical, or psychological explanation.
You enter and you see things that are not real. But at the same time, there is an explanation that makes you understand why you see things this way.
The museum offers an interactive experience for people of all ages. The illusions also include holograms, optical illusions, and an infinity room.
And that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke.